New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Welcome to Ministers Talking a weekly program where Rev Brz and Rev Z and their guests chat about current affairs, world events, spiritual principles, and any old they want to talk about. Based on the New Thought philosophy and ancient wisdoms, Ministers Talking shares a visionary perspective of the evolving spiral called spiritual living. Join us each week as we explore the emerging paradigm of life on planet Earth and beyond.
And hello again, dear ones. Rev Brz with you over here.
Rev Bill over here.
And our special guest today, Rev Bill from New Thought Philly. Rev Z is traveling and not able to be with us this morning. He's on the Pacific time zone, so it's an ungodly hour for him and in a hotel room. So we decided not to bother his wife this morning. Bill, Reverend Dr. Bill, good to be with us. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you for having me. This is, as you know, always like a flashback to my days doing zany morning radio shows where we weren't allowed to talk. Well, we actually had to be like ministers talking stuff.
Yeah, you were really not allowed to say the S word, and probably didn't talk too much politics back then either.
Oh, we loved to make fun of politicians.
Make fun of them, yes.
Yeah, well, that was the whole job. Was basically ridiculing people and slash and burn humor. Yeah, politicians. There is no shortage of people saying stupid things that we can make comments about.
Yes. I hadn't quite thought of it that way. And folks, thanks for being with us. If this is your first time with us, we get together on Friday mornings, talk about what we see in the news, what's going on in the world, stories that maybe have caught our attention, things that we want to add a little more spirituality to. And I asked Bill this morning as we were sitting down, all right, what do we want to talk about? And the concept came forward of echo chambers.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit. Why was that on top of your mind today? Why is that our direction?
Back in the good old days, and this is like we were talking about when politicians are in a debate and you ask them a question and they start with an expository answer, like I'm going to talk about something different. Back in the good old days, there were 3 TV networks, and they were duking it out to see who was going to be the leading news source in the world: ABC, NBC, and CBS. Fox came along and joined them. PBS was doing some stuff, but those were the big ones, and they had large news organizations, and they prided themselves in being journalists.
Yes.
Same thing with newspapers. The newspaper journalists all prided themselves in being journalists, which is to to get the actual story and get the facts straight. And now, as the fairness doctrine went away decades ago, which was when you had to give people equal time. So if you're going to interview the Republican candidate, you have to give equal time to the Democratic candidate. So we stopped doing that. And then we started having the news sources are in silos now. And there is less of a focus on journalism on some of them, and more of a focus on making the point that they're intending to make. And when people buy into the fact, well, I get my news from this one or from that one, and the ones that I'll use are MSNBC, which is pretty much on the left, and Fox News, which is pretty much on the right. And there are other ones that are further left and further right, and they both have the ability at times to behave like journalists. Oh, by the way, you can recognize a journalist by the retractions.
Yes.
If you find a journalist who never apologizes for getting something wrong, they're not a journalist. They're just talking stuff.
Exactly.
And the challenge of the echo chamber is that once we say, well, I'm going to get all of my news from Fox, or I'm going to get all of my news from MSNBC, and we stop listening to anything else, we are going to tilt towards whatever bias our news source happens to have. It's like if everything that you learn is coming from Aunt Sadie, then you're going to hear everything you know about the world is going to be filtered through Aunt Sadie's lens.
Yes.
And that might be fine. Aunt Sadie might be wonderful, but acknowledge that that's what's going on. And the challenge that I have is every time once in a while when I tune into the news on in somebody else's echo chamber, it's like every time there's a question, they wind up with the same rant about what about this? What about that? How come this doesn't happen? And we need to blame them and complain to them, and they're all at fault. And it doesn't lead anywhere.
Right. You remind me. What about Hillary's emails? And both sides do it. I make fun of. I use that just because it's a very identifiable idea. But we have seen this consolidation, and I remember. It seems like forever ago, but I remember in the 2016 presidential election, my Facebook feed would be awash with all kinds of people with different opinions and different perspectives, some even further to one side or another than I'm comfortable with, and but now I look at things like my Facebook feed, and whether through my own actions of saying I don't want to see that anymore, or through the actions of the organization because they've been accused of being biased in numerous ways, none of it's there anymore. I'm not being given a contradictory perspective than what I already believe. And I'm going to say it straight up. Facebook is not a news organization. So it's not a great place to get my news. But I'm not even getting opinion there anymore. And now I find it's much more important, much more dependent upon myself to go find good news organizations.
Yeah, or triangulate in so that you can sample a bunch of them and kind of figure out what might be true for you.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the other thing that's really big that I think is very important for people to do, and a lot of people don't do, which is to put down the assumptions.
Yeah.
James Mellon in his mental muscle program, right at the beginning of it, has a recommendation that you say, I know nothing. Now what can I know? And that is a wonderfully powerful tool for putting down our assumptions. I know nothing. And do that with the news. I mean, I had the conversation with somebody, a COVID denier, who says that COVID wasn't a thing. It's all been blown out of proportion. The CDC is liars. It's all Democrats, and because their cities were the ones that were hit, and they were using it to get money. I mean, just all sorts of stories. So COVID's not a thing.
Yeah.
And my response is, okay, and maybe COVID's not a thing. Maybe that's completely true. Maybe it's a made-up story. So I went and did a little bit of research. It's pretty easy. When you Google, I think, number of deaths in the United States by year chart. You come up with something that goes along at about 2.5 million deaths a year, and then in 2020 it went to 3.5 million deaths a year. It's like, why'd that happen? Okay, it wasn't COVID. What was it?
Right.
And if the conspiracy is that there was something going on that wasn't COVID that killed an extra million people, then what was it? Why don't we know about it? And that would be a huge story rather than it's not COVID. And oh, by the way, death count is really difficult to fake because every one of those deaths has a person and a death certificate attached to it, and that's something that the government actually does a pretty good job of keeping track of. And that would require an awful lot of people to be in on the conspiracy.
Yeah. Yes. I think way more than possible. Hey, one of our viewers, Dave, is saying, I find BBC and Al Jazeera much more objective.
Yes, definitely. And Al Jazeera has their own agenda. They tend to hide it pretty well. But, so yeah, that's a good place to get a smattering. Watching the BBC talk about the United States is wonderful because they don't have nearly as much of a horse in the race as our news organizations do.
True.
So other people's opinions about what's going on here are really valuable. Do you need to only watch Al Jazeera to get your news? My daughter was a journalism student, and she said that Russia Today did a really, really good job, and this was like 12 years ago when she was in school. They've since lost their edge, but those were organizations that were trying to be journalists. And again, watch for the retractions.
Yep.
Watch
for the retraction. And I like what you were saying earlier. Triangulate.
Yeah.
Folks, if you haven't seen it, there's a great chart out there in the internet. Oh, I got a blurry version today. But just do a search for a news bias chart, and you'll see it, and it'll come up, and you'll be able to see the various ways that all the various organizations and where they lean and where their bias really is. And some of them aren't on here. I'm looking real quick to see if I see Al Jazeera on here. I don't at the moment. It could very well is, and I'm just not seeing it. But the point is, let's be more active. Let's be more involved in how we source our own information for ourselves. And look at a few different places. And I find it interesting. We were talking before Newsmax, which is a newer organization on the scene, if you will. They've been around for a while, but they're starting to make more of a splash, specifically in the more conservative or right-leaning conversations. They actually just took a pundit off the air. They did an interview with a woman named Laura Logan. I'm not very familiar with her work. She was a Fox News host, I guess, and Fox let her go, and Newsmax did an interview, and she started spouting some really far right QAnon type of beliefs, and even Newsmax said, no, that's not what we're about, and we're not going to do that. We're not going to have her back on. So I see, it seems like in the last year, even what are more conservative outlets are starting to be a bit more discerning with exactly what they're letting on the air and exactly what they're bringing forward. So it's a time of transition again, I think, is what I'm seeing.
Yep. And to bring it back around to New Thought, which is the first name of the network, we have the ability to look a fact in the face and know something better. So we can understand that there is something new that's possible, and we know that there is a creative process, there's a law that is responding to our consciousness and our intentionality. Now, it works to bring more experiences of good into our world. It also works when there is when there's something malevolent at heart that somebody has. It doesn't tend to last forever, but it still works. And it's not lost on me, I think we talked about this before, that Donald Trump grew up going to Norman Vincent Peale's church. So he knows the technique. Right. And he is a master, I mean, in addition to being a master of bullying people and flat out lying, and no conscience about whose money he takes. But that's a side story. He has the ability to just say something over and over and over again as though it's true. And then people will believe him. Now, it doesn't make it true, but you say it often enough, and people believe that it's true, and it has the possibility of turning the ship.
Right.
Dr. Oz goes to a quasi New Thought church. So, in his town in Pennsylvania, where he doesn't live, in Bernathen. It's a Swedenborgian church, and the Swedenborgians were the forerunners of New Thought. Mm-hmm. And so there's a little bit of that. Qualified to be a senator? Well, as qualified as Trump was to be president, which is to say, he's on TV. He's actually better qualified. He went to he paid attention when he went to the Ivy League school.
Well, but you're very right. These principles work. The New Thought principles work, regardless of how you work them.
Yep.
regardless in the direction that you take them. So someone like a Dr. Oz, or I've been watching the Herschel Walker, Raphael Warnock race in Georgia. You know, seems to me that Herschel Walker has nothing to stand on other than look at all the bad stuff Joe Biden has done and everybody's lying. So, but you tell yourself that enough, and he's doing it. He's been doing a good job of it, it seems, because he's at least he's got himself believing his own story, and now other people. If you don't look at it from both sides, it's easy to jump on board and say, "Okay, I'm with him."
Yeah. I don't think he's a great candidate, but we need somebody who's going to stop X, Y, or Z. We need to prevent this this other thing, this calamity that I've been hearing in the echo chamber from happening.
Yep.
So,
are you on Truth Social?
No.
Yep. I'm not either. I thought about putting it in up, trying to get in there just so I could see what was going on, and see what others are, but they won't let me in. So
Really, they won't let you in?
I haven't gotten a response that I haven't been approved. So
Wow. Okay.
But that's an example, right, folks? And we're starting to hear these terms come into our lexicon. The mainstream news is consistently using quotes from Donald from Truth Social. So we now, it's now a newer platform, but not everybody can see it. And I think I know that's part of what we're talking about. That's part of the problem is we're now intentionally creating places that say you can come here because you believe like I do, but the rest of you can't.
Right.
The rest of you can't even see what we're talking about anymore. That makes it even harder. I think that's creating even more division in the nation.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean that's an intentional echo chamber. You know, when Facebook first started, it was very clearly set up as an echo chamber. You had to have a Harvard.edu email address in order to get onto Facebook when it was first launched, and then it was whatever colleges they were putting it into, and then eventually it rolled out to other people. And I was noticing yesterday, I get friend requests from people who I am already friends with twice on Facebook. I was like, okay, the chances that I need to be friends with all three of their ultra personalities, I don't know. And I could follow up with each of them and say, like, what's up with this? But then they might explain it to me, and I really don't want to know. So
well, they'll explain it to you if you send them money.
No, these are people who I'm friends with, and one of them might actually be my friend, and then the other ones might be because my friend lost their login or changed their email address and they didn't have Facebook works, or other ones are very clearly people who have who have stolen their profile so they can have me as their friend.
Right.
Whatever that's going. Back in the good old days when I was working in technology, I was in the graphics business, and it was moving from graphics and publishing into desktop publishing into digital publishing, and we came up with a way in the late 90s to personalize a magazine so that you could answer some survey questions and we would custom print a copy of the magazine just for you. And we did it at a trade show in 1998, and it just astounded people that we were able to do this, you know, in full color things. And I was horrified by the fact that we could do that, because that's exactly where the echo chamber starts. If I know the news that you're interested in hearing, and I'm only giving you the news that you want to be exposed to, then that's pandering.
Mm-hmm.
That's pandering to you so that I can get your eyeballs on my advertising or whatever it is that I'm in business to do. And if everybody's getting different news, then suddenly we don't have a cohesive group or society or basis of fact for each other. We're all off in our own little spin room.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a good question. Dave's asking, what are your best sources of current news? That's an interesting one, because for the longest time I've played by the if I need to know it, it'll find me method. Uh, I don't find that so, and that is when I start to see something hitting multiple news sources. That's honestly where I start to pay attention.
Yep.
I'm not big on the one outlet story. Now, sometimes sometimes that's the way it works. And I think that I think there is a seed of journalism at the heart of every news organization. So any one news organization can come out with an accurate, well-balanced story at any given time. But I don't see any one organization doing that all the time with every story, with everything they do. So for me, it's got to be kind of an aggregate of not necessarily where it came from first, but once it reaches a little more of a critical mass. And I know that keeps me a little behind the times sometimes on article or on stories. I'm not always right on the very front edge of something. But how about you, Bill? Where do you turn if you're? I don't go looking to read the news. I kind of let the news come to me.
Yep. My sources are the mainstream media outlets that people consider to be too liberal. I check the New York Times every day, and I understand the bias that the New York Times has, and I understand that if I were to read the Wall Street Journal, I would get the bias from the other direction. But I also know exactly which stories are going to get the biggest pieces of the bias. The part that I like is when there's a fact that gets reported, it's actually a fact. You know, if there was a raid at Mar-a-Lago and they got 1,100 pages of documents, the statistics are going to be correct. Why they did it, who did what, the opinions of the judge, and the rest of that, that's all going to be opinion. So I understand how to filter through that. A little bit on Twitter. Twitter is wonderful because Twitter is whatever people are talking about. Now, I can't read Twitter for more than 5 minutes because as soon as somebody says something, then somebody, what about Hillary's emails?
Exactly, yeah.
Donald Trump has the nuclear secrets that he's taken on vacation with him because they didn't find them they found empty classified information folders at Mar-a-Lago. Okay, I'm sure he didn't take the contents of those and put them in a shredder.
Right. And I'm pretty sure he didn't grab 50 empty folders on the way out the door just in case he needed them later, right?
They know what was in the folders. I think they when they make those things, they leave enough traces that they can tell what was in it. But so Donald Trump is accused of taking our espionage secrets and traipsing around the world with them because he's moving them around.
Right.
And every time somebody says he did that, they say, well, what about Hillary's emails? It's like, this was an email server in the basement of their private home in New York, which was guarded by the Secret Service and did not have guests in it. And it turned out to not be actionable anyway, because that was 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
Or, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So and that's just a way of changing the subject, and right. it just winds up being getting back to the point of what happens when somebody says, well, now there's this thing and they're finding this about the documents, and there are 30 voices coming in saying stuff like, well, what about? It just makes it makes it take a lot of work to go through those news sources.
Well, and to me. Okay, maybe we didn't answer the question of Hillary's emails to your satisfaction, but we did to the Justice Department. The country, the people run it, the people we've entrusted to run the country, feel we reached a conclusion, we reached a resolution, we reached the answer on that issue. We haven't yet on Mar-a-Lago, and so. Yeah, to divert the what about this, what about that? Oh, look over there. Obvious, just get out of my way, dude. No, that's not what this is about. We got to get an answer on this question. If you still want to question that, go do that. You go figure out what the hell happened with Hillary's emails. I'm pretty satisfied with the answers I've been given. And the answers that I've been able to discern through watching those trials, watching those hearings, and this and that and the other thing. So it's, yeah, Dave's saying too long ago to really matter on the Hillary emails, right?
Except that it gets used as a diffusion point.
Right.
You know, if you get asked a question and you don't want to answer the question, then the best thing to do is to come up with a different question.
Yep.
And then you can pontificate about the different question.
Right.
So I don't think we're going to solve this particularly, but there was a phrase that you used when we were talking about what we're going to be talking about, which is mind-numbing, which is Iranian, Russian kamikaze drones.
Yes.
which are being used in Ukraine, in the latest batch of attacks in Ukraine. A Japanese military tactic built by the Iranians, used by the Russians. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? You know, the fact that they're not particularly accurate. I guess that's a good thing. That they're slow and they're easy to shoot down, I guess that's an even better thing.
Right.
But why this is not the world I want to be living in.
Right.
I want to be living in the world where we are getting along and being reasonable. You know, Russia wants to have an alliance with Ukraine, then do stuff that the Ukrainians agree with.
Right. Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, we've got another half hour. Let's talk about that now. we're joking, folks. We're not going to keep you here all day. But that was, to me, that was the most heart-wrenching story of the week. And I think part of that is because we are a prayerful people. Now, remember, folks, if this is your first time watching, when we talk about prayer, we're not talking about begging and beseeching some far-off entity in the sky who pays attention or not, depending on their own whim. We're talking about an affirmation of truth. And from my perspective, from the New Thought perspective, our very nature is to be peaceful people. So wherever I see anyone using force and ugly, ugly tactics, such as kamikaze drones, that to me is not moving people forward. That's either holding them back or trying to regress people back.
Yeah.
It's either trying to maintain the status or pull us back from something. And we got to keep, and I guess I was a little disheartened because I thought maybe I figured we were probably making some progress. It's been a little while now. It seemed like, okay, the Ukrainians are starting to push back and say, no, we're defending ourselves. And then all of a sudden Russians just say, oh, you think so? And like, they're ready to push another button.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a war that everybody thought was going to be over by the beginning of March.
True.
And I guess they did not get the Ukrainians' buy-in on that particular concept because it has not gone the way it was anticipated to have gone.
Right.
And yeah, go ahead.
As you said, my heart breaks for everyone, for the people that have lost their lives in these recent attacks now. And it reminds me, I got to double down. I got to stay diligent on praying for the story. I got to stay diligent in paying attention and lending consciousness that there is a peaceful resolution finding its way forward, even though it doesn't look it. It's these types of big world events where I think that it's easy to fall into that what can I do question because I'm so far away or I'm so small or I can't donate huge amounts of money or and it's that time where so many of us are being called to turn back to, okay, hold on, let's practice the principles that we preach.
Yep.
Let's move our consciousness to a more peaceful place around all these events so that ripple ripples out and that vibration cascades around the planet.
Yep. And the question of, well, what can I do? I'm sitting over here in wherever I am, just one person. What can I do? And we take it back to principle. There's one mind, one source, one creative power that creates everything and individualizes itself as everyone, as everything, as everywhere. And we're all using that same intelligence. We're all using that same creative power. So when we set an intention to create something new in the world that shows up looking like peace and harmony and a return to stability for Ukraine or Europe or South America or Italy or the UK or the United States or the Senate race in Pennsylvania, God help us. When we set our intention, we are actually creating an active force in the world, in the universe, to invite something new in.
Yeah.
Can we do it once and say, oh, it's taken care of? And no, we have to stay there and continue to look at the circumstance as it is and be willing to invite something higher.
Yes. There it is, folks. Invite something higher.
Invite something higher.
And I think there's no greater way to do that than vote.
That's what we do this next month. Yep, you bet.
Yep.
Voting would be good. And if you're in Pennsylvania,
especially if you're in Pennsylvania, if you're in Colorado's third district, I don't even care if you vote for Republican as long as you don't vote for her. You'll know anybody out there knows who I mean. So we don't say who to vote for or who not to vote for around here, but we do say vote. And I got to say, I love Colorado. We vote by mail. It's the greatest thing in the world. My ballot showed up yesterday. I'm almost done. I got most of my circles filled in. I just got to look at some judges. I'm going to put this back in the mail by Monday, and I'm done. And I'm voted. And Colorado's had a vote by mail system for a long time now. It works like a charm. It works great. They send me a little text that says, "Hey, your ballot went in the mail. It's on the way to you." Then they send you a little text that said you should have received your ballot by now. If you didn't, let us know. So, folks, please, tis the season. Do your research. Look at multiple sources. Don't just take the party line, and please vote.
What else to be said? Vote for freedom. Vote for love. Vote for different possibilities.
Yes, absolutely. All right, folks, with that, we are going to get out of here. This is Ministers Talking Shit. It happens on Friday mornings. If you have a story you'd like us to cover or a topic you'd like us to talk about at some time, please drop us an email, ministertalk@ntmedia.org. Dr. Bill, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure.
Yes. Folks, you can also catch Dr. Bill here on the New Thought Media Network Mondays at 11 with the Practical Prayer and his co-host Carol Lawrence, as well as Sundays on the New Thought Philly channel, New Thought Philadelphia. He's there every week as well. So let's say thank you to a few friends, and then we're going to let you get into the rest of your day. Please remember it's Friday, so we got a huge day here in front of us. Be Your Own Hero with Sekou Wright starts in just about 10 minutes. After that, we've got morning prayers, the morning sip at 8:30. Where is my schedule? I don't want to forget anybody. Lindsay Leinbach at 10 with Practicing Infinite Possibilities. Just One You with Barbara Trudell Schreiner at 1 o'clock. And the good news at 5, Fireside Chat at 6. And I'll tell you, we got 2 new shows coming on Fridays in January. Eugene Holden's going to be with us in the afternoon, his program called The Upper Room. And we're going to start a new show with Reverend Dr. PJ Stanley on Fridays at 11 a.m. Mountain. So keep an eye out for those.
Cool.
Till next time, we wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.
And thanks for listening to this week's episode of Ministers Talking. We'll be back again next week with more commentary on current affairs, world events, and any other our ministers want to talk about. And if you found value here, please share our with your friends. Until next time, peace and blessings.